Every great chipper does it. They refer to it their own way. They break their wrist immediately going back, causing a much steeper angle of attack into the ball when they go through. They break their wrist going back. Now the club is way up here and my arm has barely moved. From there, I hold it or accelerate going through. Let me demonstrate. I break going back and I hold it going through. Now if I take the club back here and I accelerate into the finish, the ball's going to go flying past the pin. We have got to be able to hit chip shots aggressively and not have the ball take off on us. We also have to continue our hands to the hole, much like we talked about in putting. If our hands stop and the club keeps going, that is the kiss of death. You have no chance if your hands stop at impact. A couple things happen. The leading edge starts coming up off the ground. That increases bounce, raising the leading edge even more, and you're going to blade it. Or you're going to hit way fat because the bottom of the arc now is about 8 inches behind the ball. We have to keep the leading edge and the bounce the same as long as we can through the impact condition. So, to hinge and hold, what I do is I just break the wrist and I hold it going through. Now when I say I hold it, what I'm doing is accelerating my hand. I'm not holding on to the club. I'm just keeping my hand moving to the target. Now if you notice, my arm and club are going to form a straight line into the finish. I'll show you again. Now look here. We have the arm and the club in a straight line. That means at no point did the club travel faster than the arm. We want that with the driver because we're trying to create distance, but here we're trying to control distance. We're trying to hit at the specific distance to the target. And the best way to do that is to have the arms and club working at the same speed. This also will allow us to be aggressive into the ball and not have it shoot off the club face. So we break our wrists and accelerate into the finish. And one more time, we're going to break our wrist and accelerate into the finish. Now, all three of those balls stayed inside the 3-foot circle. And one of the things that Dave Pelz and I really worked on is this basic easy chip shot, because this is the most critical element of our short game. Not the lob shot and the flop shot and all those fun shots, which we'll get into. But getting this shot inside our 3-foot circle that we've spent so much time on now with our putter, that's our goal. And so working on this basic chip shot, refining the technique, is critical to creating a foundation for us on the golf course. Now, as we get into the specifics of the hinge and hold, I want to talk briefly about the wedge. I use a 60-degree wedge for this shot, and it can have a number of different bounces. 6 to 9, 10 degrees of bounce is fine, any of those. And all the wedges out are terrific now. There is one little thing that I do with my wedge, and that is I like to have a deeper sole. This is the wedge I use. This narrow little sole with very little bounce here, what that does is when I open it up, I'm not hitting anything on the back. I'm not adding bounce. I like this for these shots, for the lob shot. I like it for the bunker shot. I need this little extra bounce that this wider sole provides. That's the only thing that I would say to look for when you're getting a wedge. Otherwise, the amount of bounce, it really is not going to affect it too much. Now, the one correct way of doing it is a method I call hinge and hold, but every great chipper does it. They refer to it their own way. They break their wrist immediately going back, causing a much steeper angle of attack into the ball when they go through. They break their wrist going back. Now the club is way up here and my arm has barely moved. From there, I hold it or accelerate going through. Let me demonstrate. I break going back and I hold it going through. So, to hinge and hold, what I do is I just break the wrist and I hold it going through. Now when I say I hold it, what I'm doing is accelerating my hand. I'm not holding on to the club. I'm just keeping my hand moving to the target. Now if you notice, my arm and club are going to form a straight line into the finish. We also have to continue our hands to the hole, much like we talked about in putting. If our hands stop and the club keeps going, that is the kiss of death. And so working on this basic chip shot, refining the technique, is critical to creating a foundation for us on the golf course. Now, on the basic hinge and hold method, I'm set up very square to the target line. My face is very square and my ball position is off the instep. Just like I do when I putt, just like I do when I ball strike, I try to keep my ball position the same pretty much throughout. And the face is very square. I break the wrist back, I accelerate going through, and I hit the basic hinge and hold chip shot. But sometimes we need to get the ball stopped a little quicker, and there are 3 things we can do to bring the ball in softer into the green. The first is pretty obvious. We just open up the face. And when we open up the face, we're adding loft. So I set up square and I open the face. And I open it a decent amount, not just a fraction. I lay it open. Now, there are 2 things that are going to happen. If I don't make 2 adjustments, the ball will shoot to the side. One of them is I have to adjust my body until the face is aimed to the target. But the second is I then have to re-grip it. If I set up square and just turn my hands till the face is open, my hands are going to go right back to the original position. So we have to open the face. I have to adjust my body until the face is aimed to the target and then re-grip it. Let me show you again. I open up the face and I adjust my body till the face is aimed to the target, and then I again re-grip it. Now the second thing we can do to get the ball to come in softer is to come in steeper into the ball. This creates more of a friction and takes some of the forward propulsion off of the shot. We want to stop the ball being driven forward, which obviously loft did in our first segment. But in this second area of bringing the ball in softer, we want to create more of a splicing type impact condition. To do that, I put my weight forward. I move the ball fractionally forward and my weight forward, so that allows me to drive the club steeper into the ground just behind the ball. So I set up square, I open up the face and align my body till the face is aimed to the target, and then I re-grip it. And now I'm able to get the ball up even higher, softer, and get it to stop quicker. Let me show you again. What I'm doing is coming in steeper to the ball. To do that, my weight has to be forward. The ball has to be slightly forward. So I go from the original position of a basic chip shot to opening the face. I then adjust my body so the face is down the target line. My weight and ball position are forward, and I just hinge and hold right through the shot. Now the third thing that we can do to get the ball to come in even softer into the green is to take off all this forward propulsion and drive that impact causes and make an indirect impact condition. So we hit it fat like a bunker shot. We're going to open up the face, we're going to come in steeper, and we're going to drive the club in behind the ball. And let me use a tee here where the ball is so that you'll be able to tell just how far behind the ball I'm entering into the ground. Now, if we start out with our basic chip, I open up the face, I move the ball forward in my stance and adjust my body till the face is aimed to the target. My weight is forward, and I'm going to be coming in steep, and this time I'm going to be coming in steep well behind the ball. So it's going to take a lot of energy here, a lot of force. And I'm able to hit the high lob. But if you look, you can see that I entered the ground 3 or 4 inches behind the ball. Sometimes we need to get the ball stopped a little quicker, and there are 3 things we can do to bring the ball in softer into the green. The first is pretty obvious. We just open up the face. And when we open up the face, we're adding loft. And I adjust my body till the face is aimed to the target, and then I re-grip it. In this second area of bringing the ball in softer, we want to create more of a splicing type impact condition. To do that, I put my weight forward. I move the ball fractionally forward and my weight forward, so that allows me to drive the club steeper into the ground just behind the ball. I go from the original position of a basic chip shot to opening the face. I then adjust my body so the face is down the target line. My weight and ball position are forward, and I just hinge and hold right through the shot. Now, the third thing that we can do to get the ball to come in even softer into the green is to take off all this forward propulsion and drive that impact causes and make an indirect impact condition. So we hit it fat like a bunker shot. We're going to open up the face, we're going to come in steeper, and we're going to drive the club in behind the ball. When you're working on the hinge and hold method and when you're working on the lob shot, there are three things that could go wrong. The first is when you try to bring the shot in softer, you don't feel comfortable opening up the club face enough. You need to feel comfortable laying that top of the toe all the way into the ground. That'll be an awkward feeling at first. The other thing is, I see people when they try it, try to cut across like it's hitting a cut shot. If you do that with the face wide open, you're leading with the hosel. What's going to happen? You're going to shank it. So we can't cut across the shot. We actually have to swing out down the target line. That's why we open our body. We're able to swing to the target with that open face. If we were closed, we'd have to pull across it to get that open face to go online. Otherwise, it would just shoot off into a push. So it's critical that we open up our body so that we can swing and extend to the target line. We cannot cut across it, or like I showed you, we'll shank it. The other thing that I see people do is blade it. When they blade it, what happens is their hands stop. And either they hit it fat, or more often than not, what happens is the leading edge comes up off the ground, causing the blade. We have to keep our hands ahead of the club head, moving forward. So if you're blading it, make sure that your hands are ahead of the club and you continue to accelerate forward. If you're having a problem with the lob shot or the hinge and hold, it's probably one of those three things. So feel comfortable opening up the face. Make sure you don't cut across it, that you open up your body enough so you can swing to the target. And if you're catching it a little thin, make sure your hands stay ahead of the club all the way up into the finish. Now the low running shot. We've talked about how to get the ball to come in softer when we need to around tight pins. But we also have times where we have plenty of green to work with and we want the ball to run and release. There are two ways to do this. The simplest, the easiest way is to use that same hinge and hold method we just learned, but to change clubs. So I've taken my 9-iron. I'm going to go to a pin that's about 60 feet away. I'm going to do the same hinge and hold method. It's going to be a shorter swing because the ball obviously is going to come off the face faster since I have less loft, and it's going to be releasing. But I'm going to break the wrist early and I'm going to accelerate, and notice where my hands are going to finish. They're not going to stop at the ball. So it's the same hinge and hold, break the wrist and follow through. And you can see the follow through, the arm and the club have formed a straight line, and it's very easy to control distance that way. Watch one more time. Same setup, break the wrist, hold it going through as I accelerate into the shot. Now, because I was lazy growing up as a kid, in my backyard when I would hit a bunch of shots from around the green that my dad made, I didn't want to change clubs after every shot. So I learned how to hit each shot with the same club. I'd like to show you how to hit a low running shot with a lob wedge. I have my 60-degree wedge, and the only thing I'm going to do differently is scoot the ball back. That's going to de-loft the club. Now, of course, the club will come into the ground steeper and it may stick into the grass a little bit, but I'm going to use the same technique, the hinge and hold, break the wrist right away, hold it going through. So the ball's back in my stance, almost off my back foot here. I break the wrist, I accelerate through, and I'm able to hit a low running shot with a high lofted club. I love chipping. I've done it my whole life. I've had a chipping green in my backyard. I've worked hard on it. The hinge and hold method feels very easy to duplicate. I love hitting shots, but sometimes chip shots around the green are not the best play. In fact, it wasn't until I gave up my ego and love for chipping at the Masters that I finally won. 2004 was the first year that I started putting from off the green. The grass around the green was so tight, I couldn't get my lob wedge underneath the ball effectively. And so I learned and practiced putting from off the green. Now, there's really not much difference technique-wise when you putt from off the green. You may want to have the ball a little further in your stance to give it a little more loft, but not necessary. What's critical is that you don't look at the green. You've got to read the fairway. And so many times people look at the green and they feel as though it's going to be fast and they leave it short. They never give it enough effort. So what I try to do is read the fairway. I try to read the speed of it, which is why I always hit a few putts before I go play from off the green. I try to read the break and I try to get a good feel for it. But really nothing is different. I keep the same ball position. I just try to look only at the fairway, not the green, which is going to be drastically quicker than the fairway. Oh. So we're in pretty thick rough here, and I want to show you the principles of hitting the shot out of rough, because so many times I've had players say, I'm pretty good around the green, but I really struggle out of the rough. If that's the case, they're probably not doing the correct technique, because if they were doing the hinge and hold method, they would find that that method, along with the lob shot principles, will get the ball out of the rough just fine. We're here in thick rough. The club will get buried up by the grass. You can see the ball is sitting down. Now we cannot rely on spin to get the ball stopped, because we have so much grass between the club and the ball. The only thing we can use is trajectory. So what we want to do is very similar to the lob shot using the hinge and hold technique. We're going to hinge and hold throughout this shot, but we're going to come in heavy just like a lob shot, and when the ball is sitting down in the rough, we're assessing our lie and we're putting our weight forward. We're driving the club in behind the ball and letting the ball just pop up high and land ever so soft. When we have the ball sitting higher up, that's when we'll level out our weight. So very similar to the lob shot, we open up the face, our weight is forward, and we just plop down right behind the ball, and we get it to pop up ever so softly and release down to the hole. Now obviously it won't be as good as a shot from the fairway, but we can use trajectory to get the ball stopped. Using those same principles, if the ball somehow sits up in the rough like this, we cannot use that method of driving the club into the ground. We'll go right underneath it. So again, using the same type of flop shot, lob shot principles, we level out our weight so that the bottom of the arc is shallow around the ball. We open up the face slightly, but we don't lay